Searching for a Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And before we dive into who our special guest is, Joe is going to...
And it's a good one.
And it is a good one. It's a long-awaited guest. But before we dive into who we have, Joe is going to remind us of the show's purpose.
Yeah, the show's purpose is to connect Rotarians and non-Rotarians, and really anybody that's seeking service opportunity, to amazing guests like Stephanie today. Like, we're so excited for this. And to really partner them with service opportunities in their community, as well as other service opportunities that are all over the world. Because, as we've known from the show, people get introduced to Rotary and other organizations through a diverse amount of service opportunities. So that's what we're all about.
And he kind of cued us for who our guest is. So we have Stephanie Urchick, she's been selected as the President of Rotary International for the years 2024 and 2025. So we like to call that the President-elect.
Congratulations, first of all.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here with all of you, Kelly, Chad, and Joe. This is an amazing opportunity to share more information about my favorite topic, Rotary International.
We are very excited. Before we really dive into all of that, though, we'd love to take this first section as an opportunity to get to know you. Who is Stephanie? So let's start with how you got involved in Rotary.
Well, I was working in higher education in the state of Pennsylvania, and I had never heard of service clubs before. Nobody in my family had ever been in one. And one afternoon, a woman walked into my office. She had an office in the same building, and she said, "Stephanie, would you like to go to a Rotary Club meeting with her?" And I looked at her and I said, "What in the world is Rotary?" I just didn't know. So she gave me the elevator speech, and she talked about the amazing things that the organization does. And when she got to the part about the internationality, I was really hooked, because when I was growing up, I wanted to be a spy. And that's another story for a different podcast. All right.
Stephanie, do you know that we had one of our just most favorite individuals, Tom Gump, on here? He's actually been one of our special guests a couple of times, but he teased that. He did share that.
Well, it's a true story. It's a true story. So I was intrigued, and I went to a Rotary Club meeting with her, and then I went to another one. And by the fourth meeting, I was writing the newsletter for that club. And then a year and a half later, I was club president, and then I really never looked back. So that's how it happened.
And it's so funny. We've had now, 30 plus people on this show, and it's so funny. A lot of them are like, "Yeah, I just went to a meeting, and before I knew it, I was,
Yeah, it doesn't take long, right?
I was asked to do
find delegations.
Went to Guatemala.
Well, it's interesting. People are attracted to Rotary for different reasons. I was kind of like our founder of Rotary. Rotary was founded in 1905, and the man who started it was an attorney. And he had left his home and moved to Chicago, and he didn't know anybody. So his idea was to get 3, 4, however many individuals. He ended up with 3 other men. And he said, "Let's rotate," which is how the name happened. "Let's go to your office, and the next week we'll go to your office, and let's get to know one another." So initially, it was about fellowship and friendship, and the service came later. So some people are looking for that friendship. Others hear that it's a service organization and they want to roll up their sleeves and, get busy right away. Others take a look at Rotary and say, "Look at all these business professionals. I could network here and expand my business." That's true as well. And for the same reason, they look around and say, "All these business people, if I were part of this club and hanging out with these people, I bet I could get, professional development." So there's a lot of different reasons why people are attracted to an organization like Rotary. So what we have to do as leaders is just make sure we understand that as they're coming into our club, so that we can help match what they're interested in, so they see the value in belonging.
That's so good. And I love that it really was narrowed down to just a couple of keywords: fellowship, friendship, service. Those
Yeah.
are my key takeaways in that.
Speaking of
Yeah.
service, do you recall your first service project?
Absolutely, I do.
Mhm.
I had joined the club, and I really didn't know a lot about Rotary, but they started talking about a program that the club was involved in called Youth Exchange. Well, I couldn't be a host family because at that time, I was no longer married. I was divorced. I didn't have kids, and I thought that's not appropriate. But they needed somebody to go to the airport to pick up the students who were arriving. So I said, I'll do that. So I went to the Pittsburgh International Airport to pick up 3 students. And so I met them in baggage claim. And the young man from Thailand said, oh, wait, we have to go to oversized luggage. And I thought, all right. So we go to oversized luggage, and out of the chute comes a surfboard. Now, mind you, the Rotary Club I belong to was California, PA. There is no water anywhere around here.
Oh
He said,
my
I'm
word.
going to California University of Pennsylvania. Well, he learned a great deal about geography that day.
Sure did. That's hilarious.
That was my first service.
So Stephanie, can you just share with our listeners, you are located in Pennsylvania, correct?
I am in Western Pennsylvania, yes. And
Okay.
I'm now in my 3rd Rotary Club here.
Okay.
I was in the first club in California, PA for 10 years. Then I made a job switch, so I needed to get closer, and I joined the 2nd club. And then I outgrew that club in a way, and then now I'm in the Rotary Club of McMurray, Pennsylvania. Very active, hands-on group. I love it. They're a little bit dismayed. They're excited, very excited for me, but they're dismayed that I have to temporarily move to Evanston in a few weeks. So I'm not going to be around.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like the mayor's mansion? Is that what you get there?
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
actually,
So can you explain that?
it's a condo. They have a condo for the president and the president-elect. And it's basically so you don't have to work out of hotels because
Right.
there's so much travel involved. So,
Yeah.
that really is a nice way to handle, all the travel that we have to do.
When did you kind of start getting involved above the club level, and how did you kind of make that jump?
Well, I looked around at the club and really, did all that I could in the club. I went through all the avenues there. I became president of the club, and I did foundation chair for the club. And so then somebody introduced me to something called a district conference. So I went to the district conference, and there were people from all over our district from different clubs, and it was eye-opening that there was a world outside of the club. So I started to investigate opportunities at the district level, and ultimately became the district governor, the Rotary district governor. And then I found out the same thing, that there were opportunities at the zone level, because that's how Rotary is organized. Clubs are part of a district, and districts are part of a zone. So I decided that, I could serve Rotary again. So ultimately, I became a director and was on the board of directors for Rotary International. And that, of course, led me to the decision to take a look at our organization and decide whether or not this was something I wanted to lead. And for me, it's about being the right leader at the right time. So when I investigated where we are as an organization, I thought this is the right time.
That's really fantastic. And kind of as a little note to our listeners too, is just to, as you're learning more and more about Rotary and how it works, is, it starts so simply. It starts so simply by picking somebody up at the airport, and then next thing you know, you're president-elect of Rotary International.
Well,
it
I
happens
pinch
just
myself
like that.
every so often, Joe. I pinch myself to say, did that really happen to me?
That's so cool.
But one of my favorite things about what you've been talking about is you kind of answered the bell every time that you heard it, right? Like you heard it at your
Yes.
club level, you heard it at the district level, and then you heard it at the zone. And then now obviously you've heard the bell ring nice and loud for you at the Rotary International level. So it's really just answering the bell.
Well, I like to say, people ask me, how did you get from Western Pennsylvania to the presidency of Rotary? And I say, I just kept showing up.
Yeah.
When I was young, I developed a mantra that I still use today, and it's, life is always more exciting on the other side of yes. say yes, and then just figure it out. Now, that could get you in trouble with your parents, so you have to be careful, as long as it's not illegal or immoral. But I'll never forget the time I had decided that I was going to go to India for a national immunization day for Rotary. So the day before I left, I called my mother and said, "Hey, Mom, guess what? I'm going to India tomorrow." She went crazy. She went absolutely ballistic. Why didn't you tell me before this? How long did you know? And I said, "Well, I've known for 6 months, but if I told you 6 months ago, you would worry for 6 months. Now you're just going to worry for 12 days, and then I'm going to be back."
There we go. Yeah. No need to worry. It's
That's
all
right.
good.
As parents, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Yep. Definitely. I definitely understand that.
Well, we've got about 45 more seconds left in this first segment. And, what was the, do you guys have a good question? I was just going to kind of BS. You guys got a good one?
No, I mean, when we come back from the break, I would like to learn a little bit more about, how you envision the transition, but really how you've watched the diversity grow and, how that will impact your presidency. And, I've seen it, obviously we've seen it change from when I got invited to a Rotary 15 years ago till today. But, that's something that really attracted me. I just joined in the last 6 months because I saw that change.
Congratulations. Welcome to Rotary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And because of the show.
Yeah, and meeting some fun people. That's really what I would like to learn more about.
Okay.
As a reminder, you are listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And we'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
As a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms, and
we love 5-star reviews and likes and
shares.
Yes, shares.
And
you
you can
any,
search
any platform you can find.
And you can search the show by typing in Searching for Service.
It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yep.
If you are tuning in for the first time, we have our very own president-elect, Stephanie Urchick, who's going to be serving as President of Rotary International for 2024 and 2025. So welcome, and we're very happy to have you. So for this next section, let's talk a little bit about your current role. You are actually not only the first, but the second of 2 women to serve in this role, correct?
That is correct. Yes. I'm the second woman, the first U.S. woman.
So as a woman, I see killing stigma and breaking through many barriers and challenges. So can you talk about maybe some of the obstacles that you faced, but above and beyond that too, a lot of the support that you might have seen too along the way?
Well, it's interesting. I joined Rotary in 1991. So that was several years after the U.S. Supreme Court mandated that as a business organization, Rotary was compelled to allow women to join. So I never really felt any pressure or obstacles. The only situation I can remember that was a little odd was when I was serving as district governor. I had asked a friend to go with me, a male friend. And when we walked into that one of the particular clubs in my district, the members all ran over to my friend and said, "Hello, Governor, how are you?" And he was just pointing, "No, it's her, it's her, it's her."
Oh my. Yeah.
It was probably the only time that I had, any kind of unusual circumstance. Well, I take that back. When I went to we have training every year for those individuals around the world who have been elected to serve as governors for their district. So right before I was taking office, my training happened in Anaheim, California. And Rotary's come a long way, as Chad has said, and I remember back then getting a letter reminding me to tell my spouse to bring a cocktail dress. First, I didn't have a spouse, and secondly, if I did, I don't think he'd bring a cocktail dress. So
Yes.
we've come a long way. And that's one of the things that gets me so excited about Rotary is that, we really are matched up to the world. Rotary started in 1905, and, things were very different. And although women were only admitted officially in 1989, when you look at the history of Rotary, women have always been someplace. I had an opportunity to visit the Paul Harris home, which is outside of Chicago. And as I walked around the home, there are pictures in every room, and there are pictures of Paul sitting at a table, our founder, and right behind him, Jean, his wife. She's always in the pictures. And when I think about, all of the people who have gone through Rotary, and many times are couples. If one person is doing Rotary, the partner is doing Rotary too, even if they don't have the title. So I think women have always been involved in the operation of Rotary. It wasn't until the Supreme Court said, now you have to give them the title, that we actually became members.
Being the second president-elect, but being the second, what is one thing that Jennifer Jones really blazed in terms of the trail that you really look up to?
Well, she broke the glass ceiling. And so that was important. It was important, and it's important for all of us as leaders to make sure that we understand that we're role models. People look to us. And, I hope that there will be younger women, professional women who are joining Rotary who look and say, okay, there's a woman at the top. If she can do it, I can do it too. And I think that's true for all of our diversity. And that's one of the most beautiful parts about Rotary now. We have embraced the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And when I talk about it, I always add the letter B. I say DEIB, and the B stands for belonging. Because when we create these environments of diversity and equity and inclusion, that's what we do to create that environment. But the B is how I feel when I come into that Rotary experience. So it's really been a fantastic change, and I'm so excited about it. And I always say, if people have the heart and the hands to do Rotary service, then there's a place for them in this organization.
Yeah, I like that. I think belonging is the perfect word too, right? I mean, I think that's how I feel when I walk into our club, and I'm like, yeah, we belong. This is so it's a really nice. It's something that you don't think about with the DEI as much as the belonging.
Yeah. Well, it's something that's definitely interwoven throughout all of that, right? It's kind of the purpose behind the DEI, and you do want everyone to feel as if they belong.
Exactly.
When you have been on international trips, how different are the makeups and the clubs that you visit internationally versus domestically, and also with the diversity inclusion aspect?
Clubs around the world are different. That's why Rotary also embraces regional adaptability. The way we do Rotary here in the U.S. is different than the way it's done in Canada, different than the way it's done in Australia, different than the way it's done in India. So regional adaptability plays a part in what we do. The important thing to remember is that people can do Rotary any way that makes sense to them, as long as they uphold our core values: fellowship, leadership, integrity, diversity, and service. As long as they uphold our mission and our vision and our four-way test, it really doesn't matter how people choose to do Rotary, because every generation is going to do it differently anyhow.
Yeah.
When I'm speaking, I'd like to tell this story, and I hope Tom didn't tell you this already. So I've said it 1,000 times, but when I was younger, I would go out disco dancing. And I would wear platform shoes that were 8 inches high. And my father would grab me by the shoulder and say, where are you going in those shoes? You're going to kill yourself. And I'd say, Dad, don't worry. We all know how to walk in them. We all know how to dance in them, because this is how we do it. And I tell Rotarians that story to remind them that the people who come after us are going to want to do Rotary their way, and it's okay as long as they keep our constitutional documents and our core values in play.
I think that's a really wonderful way to continue to, push the envelope of what's possible for Rotary, right? Like as you continue to push on that and allow it to do some really exciting things.
I have to ask this question because we're going to dive into more on future presidency. What service project or experience had the most impact on you personally? I know there's big impacts, but that maybe really connect you and either changed you, really impacted you.
And it wasn't taking somebody to the airport.
No. There is magic in everything that we do in Rotary. When you think about, our vision statement says that we create lasting change around the globe in our communities and in ourselves. And that's a hard question to answer because, I was standing in India and I was administering polio drops to a baby. And, today that young baby is probably 30 and walking through the streets of Mumbai because of what we do in Rotary. I had a chance to be in the Dominican Republic, and I was helping to install water filters, and I was in a home. It was a Haitian home, 2 women and 3 little boys. And the little boys kept looking at the water every time we'd show them we were putting dirty water in the filter and it would come out clean. And the little boy was amazed. He kept saying, lady, do it again. Show me the magic. So everything we do has magic for somebody. We're changing people's lives, and we're also changing our own. I'm a much different person today than I was when I joined, Rotary all those years ago, because I've had an opportunity to get involved in so many things that are life-changing. I will tell you that the one trip that I did take that had a personal impact for me was after we had my district had rallied around a project. I found a hospital in southeast Poland that didn't have any mammography equipment. They had a machine at one time, but it broke, and so in 1971 they pushed it in a corner and it sat there. So when we did some investigation, the women in Poland at that time had a survival rate from breast cancer greater than 70 or less than 50%. In the US, it was greater than 75%. And I thought, my God, that's something that Rotarians can help with, because everybody has an important woman in their life, a daughter, a wife, a mother, an aunt, somebody. So every club in the district rallied, they did things, and we ended up getting that mammography unit over into this hospital in this little community called Nowa Huta. Well, after it was over, I asked the Rotarians in Poland if they could find a driver who could find this little village called Losza. And they said, probably, give us a day or two. And they came back and they said, yeah, we have this guy, he can find this village. Why do you want to go there? And I said, because that's where my grandparents came from.
Oh,
so I had an opportunity. Yeah, I had an opportunity to go into the village and walk where my grandmother walked and where my grandfather walked. And I saw the church they went to. So that was probably a very personal experience in Rotary that I wouldn't have had if it weren't for Rotary.
That's incredible, Stephanie. And we're going to actually dive out of this section, but thank you for sharing that. That is the reason for this podcast right there. As a reminder, you are listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And we'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
As a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms and
like,
comment,
5-star,
5 stars,
the gold stars.
Find us anywhere.
Just listen to the show. It's great.
Yeah. If you are tuning in for the first time, we have special guest Stephanie Urchick. She is the president-elect for Rotary International the year 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, and I think a perfect thing, Stephanie, to be talking about is in our research is we did find that one of your goals is to grow Rotary by 100,000 members in 2024 and 2025. How do you believe that we can achieve that? I mean, I believe we can achieve it. I mean, that's why the three of us are sitting here in the show, right? We believe that this show this shows like this and other types of things that can really help. But what do you feel like are the core 3 or 4 things that really will drive Rotary to the next level in terms of membership?
Well, first, Joe, that statement was made when I was president nominee. And I didn't wait. I'm not waiting until 24, 25. I'm working on membership all the time.
Either are we. That's why we're doing the show, right? That's why we're here.
That's a cumulative number, so that I hope by the time I'm out of office in June of 2025 that we have recognized and seen that growth.
Yeah.
And so how are we going to do that? Well, several years ago, Rotary embarked on a very ambitious strategic plan. And I had the opportunity and the honor to be in charge of that committee and was at the forefront of all that research we did and all the surveying. But the committee did not write a single word of the plan. The plan came from Rotarians, Rylarians, Rotaractors, Interactors, alumni, and non-Rotarians from around the world. When we were done with all the surveying and the in-depth interviewing and the focus groups, we had more than 1 million pieces of information. So our job was to really sift through it and do the pattern analysis and find the things that would float to the surface. And one of the things that came from that was, of course, our vision statement. But the other thing that came from it was our very strong priorities of our plan. Now, we don't call it a strategic plan anymore because as soon as you say strategic planning, people glaze over.
Yeah.
We're people of action. So it's now the action plan. And there are 4 priorities that lend themselves to the things that are important in Rotary. The first one is increasing our impact. Ages ago, when we had small grant opportunities, you could get a grant in a club for $1,000 and put a well in, and maybe 10 years later, somebody would go and visit that well, and it was rusted and it wasn't working, and there's a big plaque saying Rotary put this well here. Well, that's not good PR. It doesn't help the community. So we changed that, and so we're looking at global grants now that have sustainability built in, and there's more impact. And now we've gone to a bigger project called Projects of Scale, $2 million grants that really are incredibly powerful. The first one that we awarded was to get rid of malaria in Zambia. I mean, that's incredible. That's amazing. So that priority stands by itself. The second one is expanding our reach, and we've already talked about that a little bit. We realize that not everybody can get to a Rotary Club that meets Wednesday at noon. Okay?
Right.
And so we have to think outside of that parameter and start thinking about how do people live. And so that's why our council and legislation in 2016 opened the door for us and said, let's start creating different kinds of club models. So we have e-clubs. We have satellite clubs. We have corporate clubs. We have so many different cause-based clubs.
Cause-based clubs, yep.
All kinds of clubs. And that's really to help meet people where they are. And I think that's a great way that we are going to continue to grow. And developing new clubs is certainly the biggest part of that. The third priority is enhancing participation of people in Rotary, not just our members, but anybody who comes into our magic. So it could be parents of the student of the month. It could be the beneficiaries of the people we serve. But we want to get better at being participant-centered. And I already talked about that too. That means like when people are coming into the club, That's when you find out what they're interested in. Don't talk to them when they're leaving. You know, some clubs say, oh, well, we do exit interviews. Well, that's a stupid time to talk to people
Yeah.
because they've already made up their mind they're leaving. You want to find
Right.
out as they're coming in. What are you interested in? What are the things that we could do that would intrigue you? So that one. And then the fourth one is increasing our ability to adapt. Well, good grief, we showed the world we could adapt when the pandemic hit. The way we did Rotary was taken from us, and we couldn't do it that way anymore.
Yeah.
So Rotarians around the globe, grabbed onto technology or whatever means. Sometimes they just picked up their phone, their device, and said, you know, how are you doing? Let's get together. But people were craving connection, and we figured out how to do that. So that's how we're going to grow, to continue to push those 4 priorities down to every club so that clubs understand the importance of what they are and how to use them locally, because every club will use them differently.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. Like I just am like, yeah, that just the clicks, it really just kind of clicks all the pieces, right? Like, and you go,
Stephanie, it takes a lot
to stop me.
Yeah, it does. It does. So kudos to you. I can take tips
I have a very
from ya.
specific question, actually, like that's very interesting. I immediately thought of it when you started to think of, like, you know, creative solutions. Is you know, on the show we've had several guests on that. There's a disconnect between Rotaract, Interact, and the Rotary clubs, and it would just seem like, I'm thinking about like baseball, right? Like you've got to have your farm systems, and it's like we trade our pitchers sometimes before we even get them to the majors into Rotary. And so what kind of advice would you give to, you know, all of our local clubs, on the local level, where there seems to be a little bit of a miss of a connection between Rotaract, Interact, and Rotary?
Yeah.
Because that seems like a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, interactors and Rotaractors, I mean, who better to become Rotarians? They get us. They know what Rotary is all about. But too often I find that, you know, Rotary clubs sponsor these groups, but then they don't interact with them.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I talk to Rotaract clubs or Interact clubs, they say, oh, we don't want to go to the Rotary club meetings because they're all fuddy-duddies. And when I talk to the Rotary clubs, they say, well, what do these young people know? They don't know. And we need to like really get better at that. You know, I always talk about reverse mentoring. You know, I don't have 40 years ahead of me to do Rotary, but somebody in an Interact club does. And we really need to get better about mixing and doing reverse mentoring. You know, there's a lot that interactors know that I don't know. But you know what? There's a lot that I know that they don't know. So we really need to get better at that cross-pollination and getting those groups to work together. And that's not just a problem here in our country. I see that around the world.
Do you feel like service projects could be a real catalyst for helping those groups come together and have to solve problems together? Because I mean, the service component really seems like that's obviously why our show is about service. It's how we're connecting with different types of people. And it seems to be the logical answer to so many of the things. Do you feel like it would be the logical solution for that?
It is, but again, we have to think about, the two groups have to think about what are the service causes that they have that work together. For instance, you know, interactors and Rotaractors are all about the environment. Environment is one of our newest areas of focus, and there aren't a lot of Rotary clubs that have jumped on that yet. And so we really need to get them to think about that, because, you know, young people are keen to get involved in environmental issues, environmental causes. So, Joe, you're right. That service project right there would be a great one to bring all 3 of those groups together.
And then how does Rotary International support that? You know, like, I'm just trying to bring the lens back out and say, you know, how does Rotary International support those initiatives to bring those different groups together?
Well, here's an issue. All right. And it's one we've talked about a lot. Although we have databases for Rotarians, we don't have good information at the RI level on Rotaract or Interact because they're so mobile. They're in Interact when they're in high school. And when they leave high school, they go off to all different parts. Some are going to college, some are going to trade schools, some are, moving away. There's not a good way to do that. So we have been relying on local Rotary clubs to keep that information and to work with it. The same thing with Rotaract, whether it's community-based or college, university-based. Sometimes those people are mobile and they're moving. So we really need to get better at that.
I agree. I mean, as Chad's fairly new at
very new.
His Rotarian role, and I'm not too far behind him. I probably got a year on you, but I still kind of do this. I'm not sure like how that pieces in with Rotary.
Well,
so
there's a lot, there's so many different aspects of Rotary. And I mean, I'm fortunate, as are you doing the show, we learn a lot more, probably faster on different things.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
There is a lot of information and a lot of different ways to get involved. So it can be overwhelming.
It's like drinking from a fire hose, and before you know it, Stephanie Urchick is right in front of you.
Right?
Well, we're about to wrap up with this section here, Stephanie. So I think that was just wonderful to kind of tie in some of the other components of Rotary. But in this next section, we really want to talk about your goals for this upcoming presidency and beyond, your hopes and dreams. You are listening to Searching for a Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And we'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
As a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms and
like, share, review.
And find us by searching for service.
It's a tongue twister. You can't help it. If you are tuning in for the first time, we are wrapping up here in our last section with Stephanie Urchick, who is the president-elect of Rotary International for the years 2024 and into 2025. And so we are going to wrap up this last section talking a little bit about your presidency and what it looks like. And so my question to you is, what is something that you're really excited about? Let's start there.
Well, we've already talked about it. Membership. I'm really excited about membership. So my top priority is going to really be how do we go about advancing our action plan to get it to the club level, because that's where the membership growth will happen.
Mm-hmm.
The magic of Rotary doesn't happen where I'm going to be sitting in Evanston or in a boardroom. It happens in the club. It's where you guys are in the club level. That's where all the fabulous magic happens. So that's my first priority. The second one, I have a real focus on helping to heal a divided world through positive peace. We have so many tools in Rotary that we could use. For instance, we have this fantastic 4-way test. And sometimes I ask people, wouldn't the world be better if we all lived the 4-way test instead of reciting it?
Yeah.
And, there are so many ways that Rotary clubs can use that 4-way test. They could sponsor four-way test speech contests in their high schools to see, if young people can talk about it. They can, be public facing with it and, take it into corporations and communities. There's a fabulous project called Rotary Peace Poles, which are physical aluminum or other material poles that are planted in a park or somewhere in the community. And on the pole itself, it says, "May peace prevail," in languages that represent your community.
I have seen that before.
Yeah.
It has a Rotary sign and it has a QR code so people can get more information. And then what the Rotary Club can do is encourage groups in the community to use that spot for any event that is about peace or unity. We as an organization are opening a new peace center because, Rotary has peace centers around the world where we help train individuals. We're opening one in the Middle East during 24-25.
Who did we have on that?
I feel like Tom had talked about it, actually.
It was another guest.
Okay.
Pat Merriweather?
Could be, yeah. Director Pat, absolutely. So, that's all going to be an important part. And, sometimes presidents have presidential peace conferences or in different places, but they tend to be focused on Rotarians putting them together. I'm not suggesting that during 24-25. I want to have one big conference in Istanbul. I want the world to watch what Rotary is doing. So in addition to a peace conference, it'll be the opening of the center. It'll be a celebration of the first class going through. It'll be an alumni reunion. We have more than 1,600 peace alumni around the world, if they can get there. It'll be a destination for directors and trustees to be there. It'll be a major donor event. And we'll have a peace walk open to the community so that people can pay like a nominal $5 and walk with us for peace. And, then that money can be collected and given to one of Rotary's peace programs. So that's it. Those two things are important to me: membership and peace. And that's what I'm going to ask Rotarians around the world to get involved in.
I love it.
What?
So when we have you on the show in 2 years, right? 2 years, we're going to have you back on the show. We would have had 100,000 new members of Rotary at this time. What are we cheersing to? Like, what are we going to cheers to?
This is a practice, so we do this often. What are we cheersing to?
What are we
cheers? We're going to send you a bottle of champagne and we're going to cheers to 100,000 new members.
That's it. If we see net growth of 100,000 members, trust me, I'm going to be sending champagne to you three.
Love it.
I love it.
You're not going to turn down champagne at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does 100,000 more Rotarians allow us to do? Like, what is the outcome?
Everything. Okay, Joe, we're a membership organization that does service. So in my mind, it's pretty simple. The more members we have, the more service we can do. The less members we have, the less service we can do.
I wish there's a more complicated answer than that. Right?
Yeah. We really owe it. We really owe it to the organization to help share what we do with other people. I said this before. I love Rotary, just like you guys. I love Rotary. That's why you're doing this show. But I know that I'm not going to be here forever. And by expanding our reach and allowing other people to come into this organization, that's going to ensure that somebody will be there to do the magic of Rotary once I'm gone. So that's what we need to do. We need to focus on sharing it, I'm helping younger people understand that, it's not your grandfather's Rotary Club anymore. It's really something different.
Yeah.
I love it. Good.
Nope. Go ahead.
Oh,
you have the question.
Along those lines, and as they're trying to grow membership, what advice would you have for a non-Rotarian or a Rotarian that interacts with somebody to say, this is the reason or this is the path to not just join but grow?
Well, I would tell them, that something that's really important is and it's important in any aspect of our life. It's important in a marriage. It's important in a career. Make sure that you fit. Make sure that you belong, and there are so many different options with, all the things that I've mentioned. We have e-clubs and cause-based clubs and all, there's just so much available. Sometimes people will say to me, well, what do you mean I have to pay to do service? I can get my phone and do a meetup and go pick up garbage. But it's the value of a Rotary membership. It's all the other things that happen. It's the fellowship, it's the learning center, it's the opportunities that you have. So if that's the kind of service that you're interested in, then Rotary is definitely a place for you.
Yeah,
That's good.
the connection, and I think the overall scope, if you want to be on the local level, then you have those opportunities. And as I've learned, there's so much. It can start there, and you can become president of the international, but it also connects on so many different levels that if you have goals of traveling international because you want to be a spy, or if you just really care about just being in your local community, it really encompasses all different opportunities too, which I think is a pretty cool thing.
How do we know you're not a spy?
No, you don't.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, wait a second here. She could be the greatest spy of all time, is what we're saying.
Stephanie, above and beyond your presidency, where do you see Rotary long term?
Well, I see it as the premier service organization in the world. Currently we have 1.4 million members. There isn't a reason why we can't get to 4 million members, 5 million members, because look at the world. The world needs us more than ever before. It doesn't matter where you are. In my own community, I live in Pennsylvania. There are babies that go to bed hungry. That's something that a Rotarian can help. All right. So everywhere you look, there is something that we can do to make the world better. We can create lasting change all over the place. It doesn't have to be in third world countries. So, that's just the important message that, if we keep our eyes open, you can see something you can make better instantly.
Well, and again, it sounds like service is the silver bullet to everything, right? Like doing something for somebody else makes it really hard to be divisive, right? And it generates greater understanding, creates community and amazingness. And Rotary is just such an amazing organization to deliver that on so many levels. And I think actually, like, one of the Achilles heels of Rotary is that you can literally do anything. And if it doesn't exist, you can figure out a way to make it happen. So like
Absolutely.
I think it can almost be intimidating to some people. So if I'm somebody from outside and I'm a little bit intimidated and going, holy cow, these people are action. I don't even know what I want to do. So like, what's your advice to somebody that wants to serve and has no idea where to start?
I know the answer.
Get involved in a local Rotary club, and they'll point you in the right direction.
Right.
That one always does feel like a softball, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Same response. We got about a minute left here. What would be anything they want the listeners, as we leave today, to parting information or advice?
Oh, well, I think I mentioned it once before. I think as human beings, I think we all have that DNA inside of us that says, at some point we want to give back. Sometimes that gets turned off in people, and people end up being receivers instead of givers. But I think for the most part, people do have that DNA as a human, that you want to give back. I mean, if you're the parent of a child, when you have a child, you look at that child and you want to give that child everything you can to make sure that their life is better. We have that. So if that's something that, is focused, that is pulling on you, and you want to serve, you want to give back, you want to do things, then I want you to check out Rotary. You can do that in a number of ways. If you're in a community with a Rotary Club, you can certainly do it, or you can visit Rotary.org and find out more information about the magic that we do.
Just keep giving.
As Joe likes to say, it is the vessel and the vehicle. Stephanie, thank you so much for hopping on.
It's been a pleasure.
You are listening to Searching for a Service, and as a reminder, it's time to stop searching
and start serving.